Welcome to the Branded Impact Podcast. On this show, we go beyond surface level branding, honest conversations with industry leaders, behind the scenes of aligned brand building, and actionable insights to help you elevate your presence. I'm your host, Jo Espejo, aka Jo. Hit subscribe and join me each week for the Branded Impact Podcast. What if failure was part of the plan? This week, I'm joined by Jody Layne, co-founder and CEO of Accelerated Medical Practices, who's proof that business growth is a compound effect, not a single moment. Her mantra, be afraid and do it anyway. We're talking real talk, resilience, and building a brand rooted in authenticity, not perfection. Jody, thank you so much for joining me today. Can you start by sharing why you started Accelerated Medical Practices and why you do what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is a real joy. I've been listening to your podcast for a while now. I've been a marketer my whole career and owned several different marketing agencies. And in 2015, I picked up a client who was a hormone doctor and did his marketing for 2 years and fell in love with it. 2017, he actually shared with me what he wanted to do, how he wanted to grow his practice. And I just blurted out, hire me, I'll do that for you. So I joined him as the COO for that clinic here in Orlando and sold my agency to my partner. I just wanted to focus on the one brand. And 7.5 years later, we grew that clinic from $500,000 to $4.2 million. And
Wow.
there was some very specific things that I did along the way that I believe helped that growth occur. And I started to realize that the impact that these clinics are having on the world is that more people are able to access bioidentical hormones, get healthier, live longer, full of vitality. And yet there are doctor and nurse practitioner, so many of them out there that start these clinics. I have no idea how to build their business. So I was like, well, if I can help them build their businesses, I can impact way more people to have great lives than I can if I stay in this one clinic. And this clinic is doing great. Like, he's doing fine. He doesn't need me around any longer. We set everything up. So I left and started this business so that more and more people could have this amazing, healthy life.
So impact. It really just sounds like so much of what's driving you is impact.
So if I were to help 1,000 people in businesses in some way, shape, or form, and they all helped 1,000 people, that's a lot of people.
Exponential.
Yeah.
Exponential growth.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you guys focus on? So Accelerated Medical, you want to go for hormone clinics. So niching down has been truly a game changer for you.
So the AMP started just working with hormone clinics. So we made that decision very early on that is the industry that we are the most comfortable in, that we can almost guarantee success, because it's one thing to be a business coach and know business and then help different industries. But when you are able to coach a business person in an industry that you've worked in yourself, you can visualize all of the operations, all the staff, like you know exactly what they need to do. We created this framework called POWER, and POWER stands for Positioning, Operations, Workforce, Patient Experience, and Revenue. And the reason we created that framework is because the things I did at that other clinic all fell into one of those pillars. Everybody does at some point come up with their pricing and figure out what their goals are. And everybody does figure out their operations, and they know what kind of culture to build, and they want to have good customer experiences. But most people want to start marketing. And it's because they're scared or they need money or whatever reason they start with the marketing. And what I recognize is that if you start there, there's a very good chance you're going to lose a lot of time and money. Because if all the other 4 pillars aren't nailed down and operating properly, then if you start to invest a lot of money in marketing, then all these other areas could make those patients, eventually leave you. And so it's not just that these pillars exist, it's that you do them in the particular order. We really do teach the principles of power in order so that they are doing things the right way.
And it's true. You have to have awareness and clients coming in to sometimes even be able to get some of the systems worked through properly, and you have to have revenue coming in to support the business. But then when you don't have the systems in place to support the clients, you lose them. And then can you even sustain it, or can you sustain employees? And then I've seen so many things right now between I've scaled, but now I can't even keep up with the demand, or I have a lot of inquiries coming in, but then I can't convert them, or I get them and then I lose them. And so it's just like this constant piece, because I think there's also definitions of and understandings of, and it happens a lot too with branding. I'm talking about the holistic experience, not just logos and colors? And do you have a website?
Mhm.
Does that flow through to your client experience? How does that flow all the way through to the end? But then, I didn't realize for a long time when I said branding, what people were understanding
Mhm.
versus the other. So when you decided you wanted to go on your own, what were some of the first things that you did to even let people know that AMP existed?
Well, the good news was I have a pretty good standing in the community. So while I was working at this clinic, I realized this actually back in 2020. So I knew that there were providers that needed help, and I was able to speak at different conferences, and I met a lot of different providers. And so I started kind of like a side hustle. And I called it something different, but basically doing a very similar thing where I coached and consulted with different providers and helping them grow their business. So I already had a decent list of providers out there. I had already been engaged in a number of different organizations. So that was a help, but I just started doing the things that most businesses do. I started a newsletter. I started going to different conferences. I started doing a podcast. I started doing continuous webinars with different providers and different vendors and trying to get the word out there that not just are we here, but that we're a unique kind of company. So those providers that didn't know who I was understood that if they went to go work with XYZ consulting firm that their friend of a friend recommended, that we at least were slightly different because of the fact that we have all this experience in the industry. So I just started making partnerships, started talking, and kind of walked into it with a very realistic expectation that we wanted to grow slowly. So, I'm pretty good at selling and getting clients. The problem is when you start out and you start getting a bunch of clients, guess what you don't do? You don't work on your own business. And then you find yourself in a situation where you are not selling the most optimal services or you're not marketing yourself. So we spent the first 6 months really just working on ourselves. We had enough clients that we could pay the bills, keep the lights on. So there's 3 of us. My husband's one of them. So we went all in financially. But we spent the first 6 months really identifying what we wanted to build and decided this first year would be a building phase and make sure that we were doing things the right way. We developed our own website and it's gorgeous. Like we didn't just throw something together to get something out there. We've been working really hard on our socials, starting to post every single day. We did a lot of video content. We really wanted people to know we knew what we were talking.
So taking the time, and I think that's a scary part, right? And it's hard. It's hard to be consistent. And then this is where we get caught up in, and I see it happen time and time again, and I'm guilty of it myself. I get caught up in making sure that my clients are getting everything that they need to show up in their business. And then my stuff starts to fall by the wayside. So
Exactly.
if someone's listening right now and they are in the verge of switching from something, because this is something common I hear, right? A lot of times we move into something that we have experience in, whether it be in a corporate position or something that we were doing before, and now we want to go out on our own. How can they identify? Because you said it's like, well, I took the network I already built. Well, building that network actually took some time. So I want to take a step back into that pre-AMP world where you were working for this provider one-on-one. You just asked. Like you actually said, hey, hire me. I would love to work with you on that because I think that sometimes we're afraid to do that. So, one, that you even had the courage to be like, hey, that's
Mm-hmm.
me. I'm your
Yeah.
gal. And then when you were in this phase zone, you were building this business, was part of your job speaking, or were you being intentional about getting out and speaking in these conferences and building these partnerships?
So it actually wasn't a lot of intention in the beginning. I didn't really think about starting this business. I've done a lot in my life and I really wanted to focus on this clinic. We had some very big dreams. We wanted to open multiple locations. We wanted to grow it to a pretty big corporation. I'll tell you the funny thing. This is a funny story. There's an organization called WorldLink Medical. It is the #1 hormone training program in the world. Okay. They train providers in the best way to become very effective hormone clinicians. And they had a business course and I went and I spent the entire time doing this. Raising my hand. That wasn't intentional. Just the speakers weren't very good. And so I would raise my hand to ask questions to kind of point out that the things they were saying just really weren't very good. And the creator came up to me at the end and she said, by any chance, do you want to speak next year? Because clearly you have a lot to say. And I went, sure. And so that was an organic, just natural thing that occurred. And the following year, so that was in 2019, 2020, she had me speak on marketing and culture. But do you remember what happened in 2020? It
Don't shut
was
down.
COVID, right? It was COVID. So she had the event anyway. There were like 20 people in the audience. Half of them were my own staff and then everybody else on Zoom. I think my presentation was like at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday about marketing. So I did the best I could, but I didn't expect much. But when I got off the stage and I sat down, because it was all on Zoom, anyone who wanted to ask a question put it in a chat and they had the speaker respond to them. I had like 100 questions.
Wow.
People were listening. They were interested and I got a lot of requests. So this particular company really was a very organic thing where people were asking. And then so I started thinking about getting out there. And the real lesson that I want to share with people is it's okay to give your knowledge away. Because when you begin to give your knowledge away on social media, in seminars, and whatever it is, people start to look to you as the authority. When you hold back, when you're greedy and you say, I'm not going to tell you that because you're going to go do it on your own, then no one really gets to know you. I give away what I know. I believe that is the number one way to be authentic. Share what you know, and that's people just start to gravitate towards you.
And it really helps you establish that credibility and that increases your visibility. The one thing that I have found that I have gravitated to is a person that is willing to show me and teach me. And then I'm also one of those people that if I can, and most likely what's going to happen because it's just my tendency, I'm going to try to do it by myself. And then when I realize I've either outgrown it or I don't have the time, and I'm
Right.
like, cool, that sounded doable. But at the same time, is that the best use of my time?
Mhm.
Because I'm also trying to build a business and I'm also trying to do all these things. I'm going back to the person that gave me all the knowledge and all the things because I was like, hey, I need more of that. And I really just want you to do it for me. Can you do that? But don't be afraid. And that's something that I truly believe in. If you're willing to give the information, you establish yourself as that authority figure and that credibility figure. And then you have to be willing to let people know that you're available.
And end whatever you're teaching with that call to action to let them know, like, go ahead and give this a shot, or come and work with my team. I tell these providers, like, I've made all the mistakes. I've made all the failures. So if you work with us, we will eliminate the trial and error. You'll probably save 18 months of ramp up time and we can get you going right away. And that is the biggest difference. Even if you take my information and go try to implement it yourself, you're still doing trial and error. But I do want to mention one other thing about giving your information away that is so important in this day and age is that when you share your knowledge based on experience, like you can tell it through a story, that differentiates you from AI. But when I share it, I can share it from an actual experience of what I've done. And ChatGPT can't do that. So that's another reason to kind of give it away.
And I think we get caught up in this whole like ChatGPT. And then lately I've been asking, and it's ChatGPT is so prevalent. It's in everything that we do nowadays, right? It comes up in so many conversations. And I actually just had this call this morning on a strategy call. And she said, well, ChatGPT said that if I do this for the next 3 months, then I can switch over. And I said, it's an interesting thought. But then at the same time, I said, there's so many more factors that can go into that, right? And
And
so
she
then,
didn't tell ChatGPT, so she didn't take into consideration.
correct. And then
Yeah.
it's the pivoting. And then it's
Mhm.
the best laid intentions. And if you follow things to a T, and I don't know about you, but how many times have you felt like you followed all the rules? I did all the things I was supposed to do.
Mhm.
There's variables and there's things that you have to do to pivot.
Right.
And so what you're saying is, I've done it. I've been there. I've done it. I've made all the mistakes.
Right.
And then now I can see when we need a pivot because of XYZ factor. But the key is one, you're getting yourself out there. You're letting people know that you exist, that you have this knowledge, and you're encouraging them to do it themselves. And then reminding them that if they want assistance or what you try it and you don't love it, or hey, you may just be one of those people that doesn't want to do it by yourself.
Right.
We are the option. And that's where I think is missing from so many people. We've gotten into this world where I think people have really honed in and they hear this message, right? Share your knowledge, share your value, establish yourself as a thought leader or establish your credibility. I'm like, great. But don't forget to tell people who you are and that you're here to serve. Don't
Right.
just tell them to go find or that you need this and then forget to say that you're the solution when they want go get that help. So that's a key. And I know for me, I have the podcast now. This was not something that I did in the very beginning. So I got out there in different phases and I started with my visibility and credibility more in a manner of, well, I mean, even networking can be overwhelming. But if you were to say trajectory wise, what you would recommend as far as like start here and then you build to this and then you build on to adding this? Because to be quite honest, if you haven't been doing anything and then you try to take on posting videos on social media, showing up consistently, doing a podcast, speaking on stages, doing all that stuff, that falls into line in the same thing that we were talking about as far as efficiency goes. If you can't be efficient in what you're doing, then going to really work. Did you have
Yeah,
any
I absolutely would
recommendations
not
as far as
recommend.
like where someone should start?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I would not recommend starting with everything. And everything I rattled off my tongue has been going on for a year. I didn't do everything on day one. So, I'm glad you brought that point up. I think I would recommend somebody to start with the thing they enjoy. Like if
Mm.
you're a social media person, like if you spend a lot of time on social media for yourself, then absolutely start there. I like to speak. I like to present. So it was just a natural, organic thing for me to reach out to organizations and say, can I speak for you? And the podcast, I love this right here. This is my love language. I can't tell you whether my podcast is going to propel the business. It propels me. And so that's why I decided to do it. It's a lot of work though, which is why I think that if you're going to start a new business and you want to start getting visibility, you've got to pick the thing that you would do even if you weren't getting paid for it or you didn't do it for your business, because that means you're going to do it as often as possible. And I can't really say exactly what that thing is because every industry is different. You know, your target audience are different places. For example, like I'm not spending a lot of time on TikTok. My doctors are not there, you know, and I try to do things that mimic what I'm going to tell them to do.
Mhm.
So that's like kind of my philosophy is, would a doctor ever, you know, like go and you know, speak on stage? Absolutely. Would a doctor, you know, do a webinar? Absolutely. So I'm doing things that are comfortable for my audience to participate in as well.
Being in places that they will be, because this is where, I have some clients who love being on TikTok. And then I'm going, you're spending all of this time and effort to create TikToks, but is your ideal client even going to be here to see it? Like when you talk about social media, those tend to be the first things that people mention. But Facebook is still huge. And then there's YouTube that so many people are just overlooking and just ignoring. And I'm like, guys, that is still like such a robust platform. But ultimately, if you're listening and it adds into the shoulds, it's like, all right, great, Joe. Thanks, Jody. You're telling me that I need to go do all of these things. No, what we're saying is go and be intentional with your time and start with the things that you enjoy.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, social media and making videos was not something that I enjoyed. And I would find any excuse in the book to move my content creation blocks on my schedule. I was like, you want me to do videos? Nope, that the laundry is like my kid needs a soccer uniform tomorrow. Or like
Right.
I would schedule anything over it. Any opportunity I had to get out of my content video creating block. But then I also networking. I love in person. I do really well face to face. That's where I thrive. But I also then had to make sure that I managed my time because I went through a season where I was like, oh, wow, I just networked myself to death. Like I
Yeah.
literally spent so many hours in person that I didn't have time to do the other things. So
Yeah. That's true.
figuring out what brings you joy, as Jody mentioned, because then you're going to be more apt to do it.
Hmm.
I like to say too, whatever you can do consistently. So,
Hmm.
like, if you haven't been posting on social media, period, trying to take on posting 7 days a week is unrealistic to me. And I think you mentioned earlier, I think we weren't on recording yet, but you're like, we are now getting to the point that we are posting on a consistent basis. You
Yeah.
have to start with something that you can do consistent. So if you haven't posted at all, then maybe you start with 1 or 2 days a week and then you build to 3. And then you have to decide if you need to build from there. Because I think it depends. It's like you said, I can't give you a blanket answer because I don't know your industry. I don't know your target audience. I don't know that. So without that, I can't tell you what your cadence should be, what your pillars should be, and honestly, what platform you should be on. Because
Yeah.
I know that there's some people who I'm like, LinkedIn is really where you need to be. And
Yeah.
then can you be consistent? I think ultimately consistency and authenticity are going to be the things that really can impact what you can do. If you're in a service industry or you're providing something that you're going to encourage people to do, you mimicking that. Like, so I use that and relate it to the fact that I encourage my clients to become the face of their brand. I think it is so important for people to get to know who behind the business.
Hmm.
If I never did a brand photo session myself and I never got on and showed people, well, then you got to walk the talk, guys.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to encourage people and ask people to show up authentically, or you have to walk the talk, because then it's almost like people may not understand why there's a disconnect, but there's a disconnect between what you're asking them to do and what you're doing.
There's one more I want to throw in there, and that is being clear about the result you're looking for. If you are starting a brand new business and brand awareness or visibility is what's important, there's a certain path to go down for that, like being on social media, doing more video, being that authentic, giving away your knowledge. If you need business, if you have to start generating revenue really fast, spending all your time on social media is not going to generate that revenue.
Right.
So think through, because I've seen this happen before where even in my own space, like providers talk to their friends and other friends own businesses. What should I do? And everybody wants to give an answer, but no one's asking questions. So go do X, Y, Z. Go, you need to post on social media at least 4 times a week. You need to be doing blogs and you need a great website. Those 3 things are absolutely great marketing tactics. But if what you need are 5 new clients each month for the next quarter, those 3 things aren't getting that for you. So I would pivot then and say, what you need to be doing is calling, networking in person where you can meet people and create a call to action. And your website needs SEO. You need to be focused on the back end of your website, like those kinds of things. So I say that because I've just seen so many disappointed providers or business owners who spend money, spend time doing what they were told to do, but they weren't clear about what they wanted out of it, and therefore didn't get.
That is a game changer. If you guys don't take anything else from this video or this podcast today, understand what your outcome that you're trying to get. Everything comes in phases and you get to build
Mhm.
and you
Yeah,
evolve. And so
that's
where
it.
you started a year ago or 2 years ago or however long you've been in business doesn't mean that that's going to be today. And so we talk about ideal scenarios and I do talk about all the things, but then I'm like I usually I usually respond with when I hear things like I know I need to.
Mm,
My question is, do you? And they go, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you? What's your goal? Like, what are you trying to get out of this?
yeah.
And then what are you going to do with it? Because the social media piece or emailing or getting up on stages, I am guilty of getting up on stages and forgetting to tell them that I provide a service and to call me. Right. Like, up and I'm like, here's all the amazing things. And then I can't tell you how many times I haven't given a call to action. I was just talking about it this weekend. I did a workshop, loved it, love pouring into people. People walked out of my workshop with like, Jo, that was phenomenal. Like, I am implementing XYZ. I did this while we were sitting here. Like, thank you. And then she's like, well, how did that work out for you? Like, what sales did you get from it? I'm like, well, none. She goes, well, what was your call to action at the end? I'm like, I didn't have one. But that was a mindset block. I'm going to be honest. I was like, I don't want to sell. I'm here to provide a service. I have to remember that offering the sell, like offering that extra step is a service.
100%. I was just going to say that people tell me all the time, I'm not a salesperson. And I was like, do you help people? Like, yes, I
Right.
do. Well, then you're a salesperson. We are
Correct.
all salespeople. It's just, we're not used car salespeople, not timeshare salespeople. What
Right.
we are people who know something, can help another person. And we just want to share that. I'm older. I've been disappointed in my life. I've got a lot of rejection. I've been through all of that. At some point, things shifted for me. And I said to myself, when somebody says no, it has nothing to do with me. I don't have to feel bad about that. So
Yes.
I no longer have any worry about offering my services or anything to people, because if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. It means nothing. If you want to work with, my competitor, go
Please.
ahead. It's okay.
Right.
And
Yes.
so when you shift that mindset away from I'm a salesperson to I'm just sharing my knowledge and helping out where I can, then you wouldn't forget to do the CTA at the end of
Letting go of the fear of being a salesperson and then really embracing this world of like, I am meant to serve, but the only way that I can do that is if I let you know that I'm available.
Right.
Right.
And there's a cost to that. And the reason there's a cost to it, like, again, when you bring in the financial piece, people always like, I can share what I do, but then I have to tell you how much it is. I spent 40 years learning a bunch of stuff that I can now hand over to you and you can learn in an hour. So that's one of the reasons that there's a cost. And
Right.
it takes something for me to sit and do what I do or hire other people to help. All of that is just part of the price. It's not like, it's not like you're tricking somebody out of their money, but I
Right.
think that people got caught up in the whole I'm selling and then I can tell them the price. They're going to think it's too much and they see the value. And no, if what you're giving to somebody provides them more value in either monetary gain or personal enrichment or career advancement more than what you're selling it for, then they got it at a discount, in my opinion.
I mean, and we all have put in time and effort in some way or another. But I think it's that mindset shift that you were talking about. And salesperson has such a negative connotation.
It
And we
does.
need,
Yeah.
and so when selling is serving is what I have used to be able to shift myself away from feeling icky about selling. I'm like,
Hmm.
no, selling is serving. And I am not going to sell you something you don't need because that's not
Completely.
what I'm here to do. Right. So I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to educate. If you decide you want to work with me because I am offering something that you feel like will provide value, then I'm serving you.
Hmm.
And then you mentioned the no's, like not letting it impact you and really soaking in, it is not a reflection on you. You are just not the right person. And honestly, that's okay because
Mhm.
we are not meant to serve everybody. One of the other things I've used to kind of help flip that switch for me is that every no is leaving room for the right yes. Because
Yes.
you also know that there are people you could turn the sales button on and you could sell to.
Mhm.
Most likely close if your selling is a good
Mhm.
option, but those that you had to convince to buy end up being a heck of a lot more work for me, in my opinion, have ended up being the people that I've almost regretted working with because
Mhm.
I'm like, man, if I have to sell you, I'm not your person because then everything is going to be harder. Like getting you to trust me, getting you to implement what I say, doing all those pieces. If I really truly had to sell you for the term of what we all know it to be, to really sell you into a service, then it's going to be a long uphill battle for me. But all of the clients that have come to me and they've heard about me, they understand the value. I don't have to sell. It's just more of a conversation of how am I going to serve you and what
Mhm.
capacity?
For
I
sure.
have this package and I have this package. What would you like to start with? Those are game changing clients and I enjoy working them and with the impact that I get to make. And I think that's maybe why you and I align so well because ultimately the goal is impact. Like,
Yeah.
can I impact your business? And then what can I help you do? Because that's how I get joy. I'm not doing this just to make a paycheck. Because if I were just wanting a paycheck, I could get that at McDonald's. I could
Yeah.
get it anywhere. There's so many ways to make a dollar.
Right.
We're choosing to perform and do a service or start a business or run a business, doing something that we enjoy. And there's usually a reason behind that joy. And what is it? Like because we're impacting people in some manner.
So one last thing, that no that you get from somebody, it could be that you are the right person and it's not the right time. I'm a big believer in I continue to ask until you tell me to stop.
Mm,
So I do a lot of emailing. I still believe that email is a good source of communication, even though, and I believe you need to email more these days because so many people just delete, 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 delete. So you have to really stay front of mind. And I had a woman who I had a call with a year ago and she said no. And I kept her on the list. She didn't tell me she didn't unsubscribe, kept getting all my emails. Then a year later, so this was about 3 weeks ago, she showed up at one of my trainings. And at the end of the training, she signed up for another discovery call. And we're working together now.
amazing.
So she wasn't in the right headspace or she didn't have the money or whatever it was. So you want to be careful when you have a sales conversation and you get a no to be totally great with that person because you
Yes.
never know when they're coming back.
How often are you emailing? So, this is a topic that I think we're losing sight of. And one of the objections I hear when I tell people about email is that they're like, oh, but I've heard emails are really not the way to go anymore because everyone's unsubscribing or, inboxes are insane. So, what are your thoughts?
Inboxes are, and something has to change about that. There's got to be some kind of, I'm sure there already is, like AI tools that kind of help you out. But we
There is.
email, so it's every Monday, every other Thursday. And then we do like the last week of the month, we do about 4 emails in a row to sell something. And then we do periodic events and we do emails for that as well. So somebody's getting an email from Accelerated Medical Practices that are on our list, anywhere from 1 to 4 emails in a week. Now,
Wow.
here's something I heard, Joe, that is very interesting. I don't know if you know Jay Schwedelson.
No,
He's
I'm
the
not familiar.
marketing guru. I saw him speak at Let's Grow, which is the Keep conference back in October. And I've been obsessed with him ever since. He's a Florida guy. He's very, very authentic the way he communicates. And I was listening to his podcast and he said, all this people saying email's not the way to go any longer because people are unsubscribing. Let me tell you something. People's inboxes are so completely cluttered. If somebody unsubscribes, take that as a win because that means your email stood out enough for that person to realize they don't want to talk to you any longer. Like an
Interesting.
unsubscribe is just a relationship that is ending. This person doesn't want to hear from you any longer. Not like you said about the sales who said no,
Yeah.
wasn't a good fit. So if someone unsubscribes, that means that you stood out. Do more of those kinds of emails. I'm going to do more of those kinds of emails, but his point makes sense, right?
Well, I'm going to give you a different spin to this because I really like that. And I need to go find this guy and start listening. But this is the other piece too. I want you to take into consideration how busy people are. And I know for myself, sometimes when I get that abandoned cart email or I get the follow up email or whatever, I'm like, oh, I really want to work with you. I just got to the point where something else distracted me or I squirrel out or whatever. And so holding on to the fact, I have been intentional about not unsubscribing, even though I don't read every single email. I'm a huge Jenna Kutcher fan. I do not read every single one of her emails, but I intentionally do not unsubscribe because I want to make sure she still shows up in my inbox because if and when I do have time, I want to read it. Mel Robbins is another one. Honestly, I just enjoy reading her subject lines.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, cool. And then I delete a good majority of them because I don't have time to make it through all my emails, purposely not unsubscribing because at some point I do want to read it or I want to at least kind of have to take a peek at what she has to say. And I open about every 10. I mean,
Yeah.
realistically, I don't open them all, but I do open on a regular basis. So I
Yeah.
think if you keep in mind, we are in such a busy world. If someone really didn't want to hear from you, they would unsubscribe. Honestly, could absolutely mean that they were cleaning up their inbox. Like, I
Yeah.
think that's where for me, because now they have all these different AI tools where you can go
Mhm.
and it's like, if you haven't opened this email, and now Gmail does it too, it's like, you haven't opened this email in, however many months. Do you still want to be subscribed? And I'm like, yes, no, maybe, whatever. But
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything other than the fact that they just aren't interested right now. They could come up on your list again. But I love you bringing up the fact that emailing is still a thing. And this is where I think the last note emailing is the one thing that we actually get to hold on to until someone purposely says, I no longer want to hear from you. Because with social media, I don't care what platform you're on, you can get locked out, you can get banned, you can get hacked. You could wake up tomorrow and anything that you have been working on to build could be gone. And then now we have a lot of parameters on what can you say, what can you do, and all these pieces. But the email is one area where, and I tell people, even if they're deleting it and they're not reading it, it's exactly what you said. You're still top of mind.
Yeah.
They had to see your name to know, yes or no, they wanted to read it. And if they didn't open it and unsubscribe, it means somewhere in their mind, they're like, we still want it to come, just not today.
Yeah.
I can't read it today.
We need to spend more time on our subject lines than our
Yes.
email messages. So as most people write their email message and then it's an afterthought, their subject line. I would workshop the subject line first and then write the message because as you said, you loved Mel Robbins' subject lines.
Subject
So
line.
yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so I just want to throw that in too.
I'm glad you did. And that's so true because we spend so much time on the copy. And I want to equate subject line to like the hook. You want
Yeah.
to get them, it's like stopping the scroll, right? So I tell people all the time, no matter what you're doing, you want to stop the scroll, whether that be for social media, now, because we are scrolling. And I know like I go through and do a highlight all, and then I go, I'm like, I'm keeping that one, I'm keeping that one, and I'm keeping that one, deleting the rest. The subject line.
Yeah.
I'm also not even doing the preview. Like I literally, all I am reading is your subject line. And that is
Mhm.
determining whether or not I'm
Yeah,
stopping to read the rest.
me too.
Well, Jody, thank you. That was so many great nuggets today. And so
Oh,
if
thank
you have
you.
been listening and you would like to know more about Jody and Accelerated Medical Practices, a hormone clinic, or know of someone that could, where can they find you?
So website is the best, acceleratedmedicalpractices.com, or email me directly. It's Jody, Jody, at acceleratedmedicalpractices.com. And if you would like to learn more about what we do, my Instagram and Facebook, both at Accelerated Medical Practices on both channels, have tons of video of us talking about just tips and tricks and advice and just kind of like getting to know us before you work with us.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And so please, anyone that's been listening, if you feel like you know of someone that could benefit from this episode, please be sure to share. And as always, continue to get out there and make your branded impact. That's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Branded Impact Podcast. If today's episode sparked something in you, please take a second to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend who's ready to unlock their rebrand era. And if you're ready for a brand that's rooted in authenticity and built for impact, one that truly reflects your story, your energy, and your evolution, let's connect. Head to brandingbyjo.com or DM me on Instagram at brandingbyjo. Thanks for hanging out. Now get out there, show up with purpose, and make your branded impact. I'll see you next week.